The areas of knowledge I've gained throughout 40 plus years of living have come together as a man in my 40s, and this is what I refer to as the age of wisdom. I think once you hit a certain point, all your experiences start coming together and feel like they're interconnected. So you have what you refer to are these lenses of knowledge, and when it comes to me, one of the areas of expertise I have is one of the ones I spent a lot of time in terms of high school, college, and education and experience in the world, and it's the automotive industry. Everything from service to prototype builds to research and development, and now I'm actually working with the very great famous Sandy Munro and learning his knowledge of lean design. And I've noticed even within that discipline, within the engineering discipline, there are people that have very specific areas of expertise, and they tend to view things and solving their problems or solving whatever problems on the table through their area of expertise, and they don't always have a general knowledge or a very good understanding of all the peripheral, all the connected pieces that can help solve the problem. This can lead to problems, and I think where someone with good general intelligence, someone with good general experiences, has the ability to step outside of that problem and look around for external solutions that they've picked up from other things. And for me, I've made a career in the auto industry, a lot of it in testing, a lot of it in in the mechanic side of things. I would live, breathe, eat, sleep the auto industry, from the world of hot rodding, muscle cars, to pure performance, to emissions testing, prototype vehicle builds, vehicle testing, and now breakdown and analysis, reverse engineering, everything that from service to sales on the outside of the industry to the outer reaches that touch the customers and the customer experience. So I have a lot of lenses of knowledge within the auto industry itself, and I think I have a good general intelligence in the auto industry. I also have studied the alternatives, which, like hydrogen vehicles and electric vehicles, and I see the solutions, and I see the benefits, I see the disadvantages of these things as well. It is a sliding scale, one's taking over the other, and the industry itself is going through an unprecedented usurping of its tech, and the upstarts are taking over and leading the way, and we're going to see if the legacies can stick around. So that's a whole other dynamic of the auto industry that I can speak to quite a bit, and it's just one of my many lenses of knowledge within the auto industry that I have. I've watched some of the startups have come and go, and I've watched some of them rise to the top and show the world how it's done in a different way. And they did something similar. A lot of them used outside processes and outside learnings to pull that in and free from the rigors and bureaucracy of the auto industry. So there's a lot of that to be talked about as well. These are areas I want to get into the conversation in. I come across a lot of great people in the bars and pubs, and these are the people I want to talk to and continue to have conversations on pub wisdom. It's not just about guys having beers and drinking and talking about whatever. I do like to talk about big concepts, big topics, and get them, and even try to come around to some sort of solution. Let's solve the world's problems. And it's kind of a joke, solving the world's problems one beer at a time, and then because of the alcohol hangover, you forget them the next day. Not always true, but it's something I find funny, and I do like to get big concept and then figure out a solution, and then heck, even how do we motivate? How do we execute? How do we get that idea into process? I feel like I've come across so many really good people with so many great ideas, and nothing ever happens the next day. So I'd like to get that going. Is philosophy, and this is more of a recent one to me. As a younger person, I couldn't care about philosophy. just had no interest to me. I was more interested in how things worked, how to make it work, how to improve it. So a lot of science and a lot of engineering, pure mechanics of things. And it's a direct knowledge you can physically get your hands on, and you can actually do something about it. So that's where I like to learn. As I've gotten older, there are things that I've done personally. There's things that I've learned from my parents that have stuck with me. And once I started learning about philosophy, and what did it to me was a TED Talk that Tim Ferriss had done, and he referred to it as fear setting. And it was just kind of one of those things. I was listening with interest. I kind of knew who Tim Ferriss was, but he came around to a traumatic experience in his life, and something that he discovered that helped him kind of get through it and iron out a lot of his anxieties in life. And he referred to Stoicism, and he said it's not what we think. It's not the person who just stands there like a brick wall and is emotionless. It's actually an ancient way of thinking that predates biblical times, and even you'll find traces of that adapted into the Bible because it's something that just works. But Stoic philosophy is what he referred to as taking a software and downloading it into this wetware, which is a brain, and utilizing that to thrive in harsh environments. The concept of not concerning yourself with things outside of your control, and only concerning yourself with the things you can control and what you can do about it. And parallel something like my mother taught me as a young age, just always prepare for the worst and hope for the best. If you're prepared for the worst, you won't have any fears about when bad things going on. You'll be prepared. When you hope for the best, when the best things happen, hey, it's a good time. And that's kind of how it was a real good summarization of how Stoics in general tend to think and operate. And it's made a renaissance in this nation and I guess in general. And it's good to see something like that come back around. And I'll talk more about that in the podcast as well. It's one of the things that keeps coming up, and one of the things I keep going back to, especially when I hear people talk about anxiety and depression and things like that. And it's all in our heads, and it really is. And neuroscience is another one that kind of shows us exactly that. And it's another bubble, another thing I nerd out on is neuroscience, and that's one of the things that I have another lens of knowledge on, is just neuroscience in general. Another lens of knowledge on is just neuroscience in general. How the brain works. What do we use to study it? Psychologists or psychiatrists or whatever, it's pretty inexact science, and it's not a lot of science to it. There's actually a lot of guesswork. The brain is complex. A lot of the emotions are complex. What we're going through, what our brain does, what we're living with is legacy hardware operating in a new environment that's just not made for it. I mean, the advent of the phones, the technology, even what I'm doing right now, not something that was normal 100 years ago or more. And the further back you go, the more normalized the body is for the environment. And I think you'll see a lot more health involved and a lot less issues. And that can bring me around to evolutionary biology, which is another subject I like. Evolutionary biology, which is another subject I like. And more recently, I've picked up on some stuff from the Dark Horse podcast, which is another very good resource. These are two evolutionary biologists that really just talk about subjects, and even writing a book on it, The Hunter-Gatherer's Guide to the 21st Century, is basically them looking through their lens of knowledge, utilizing evolutionary biology and how that focus can help you understand certain things and why we do things the way we do things. Simon Sinek, an amazing, amazing individual. One of the best TED Talks of all time. Kind of how I got hooked into him. Followed him around and social media. Watched a lot of his talks over and over again. Helped me understand what a good leader is. Let's start with Why Leaders Eat Last. All of his books have gone through them and applied them to what I look for. One of the reasons I work for the guy I work for right now, Sandy Munro, I identified good leadership in him through some of his rants on YouTube. And most people would look at a business like that and why would you say that? It's gonna scare people. It's gonna polarize people. It might push people away. But if it's the right thing to do, that's what you do. That's what you focus on. That's what you push for. That's his vision. I saw that. I aligned with it. I simply wanted to meet the guy. He was local to where I was working. I decided to drive up, knock on the door, got to meet him, and sure enough, offered me a job based on that. After I went through the interview and talked to him for a bit, I couldn't refuse. And it's been a good learning experience for me. It's jumped into a slightly different field of the auto industry, and I'm not just the auto industry, but manufacturing in general, and that's not something I'm really familiar with, but it's been an amazing journey so far. It's been working out, and couldn't be happier as far as working for someone like that. So leadership is something that I have got a sharp focus on. You can see bad examples all the time of poor leadership, and it's usually how employees are treated, whether you're seeing them treated by managers or you see their general attitude at a place of business. If they're happy working there, they're usually very happy and good to the customers. If they're not happy working there, it's usually because they're probably being treated poorly somewhere, whether it's management or at home or whatever. So a good leader will help that person become family there, and they will treat them like family. And when the family member screws up, you just don't say, "Sorry, son, it's you or the Mercedes," and you just don't do that type of thing. It's a new age way of thinking, and we got to get rid of that. There are leaders nowadays that don't think like that, and we need to support them, make moral decisions on how we spend our money. And if we see a company, a business that doesn't treat their people well, honestly, we shouldn't be spending our money there. And maybe they'll implode, maybe they'll change. We'll see. I don't get political, but I do not like people with fixed mindsets and locked ideologies. And that's where I get into some conflict with people who are locked politically or locked religiously. And if you are open-minded, we can talk. We can talk all day. And I will hear you out. I will listen to you. And hopefully you'll listen to me. That's the idea of being open-minded. If you change your mind 1% direction one way or the other because of the conversation, then I think that's an effective conversation. You'd hope for more, but whatever. It's baby steps. You build a relationship. You continue to talk to a person that's got different views. That's why you keep them around, because they have different views. And won't go much more on that right now, but philosophy versus locked ideologies. And I like to be able to utilize what I've learned to use a Socratic method and pick people apart and ask them questions till they find the extent of their knowledge. And if they get upset and they have an emotional response versus a logical response, you know you're getting at a nerve. And whether that's a good thing or not, that can be determined later. Being in my 40s, being a divorced man, as a young man, I thought I can solve this issues between men and women. I can do this. I can figure it out. No, I wasn't young and naive. As I've gotten older, our phones give us this fingertip knowledge to fingertip pathway to the knowledge of the world. And if you seek out the right things, I think you'll find it. But you still need the critical thinking skills to determine whether you're getting good information or bad information, or information you just can't use. One of the things I studied for the last several years is men and women, differences, similarities. In a lot of the categories I've talked about, neuroscience, genetics, evolutionary biology, just seeing those differences. But also looking at the roles that we tend to be better geared for. And I know a lot of people will get upset about gender roles, but however, it is what you make. It is what you make it in a relationship, and that's between two people. Whatever you do what you do between two people, and you make it work. Men and women are inherently equals and opposites, in my opinion. Just better at certain things than the other, and they should be complementary to each other and support each other in that manner. And that's what I look for, and that's what I hope most people I talk to would look for. That's the advice I would give them. So I have done a lot of studying there, and there's a lot of great people out there that are in, on YouTube and on different platforms that will talk to these points. And a lot of that just comes from pure observation, life experience. What have I experienced? What do I know that other people have experienced? What are other examples in life that I've seen? There's some good examples out there. There's some poor examples out there, and I like to talk to all of them, honestly. And if you don't learn from your mistakes, you better, and just make it better next time, and utilize those steps to be a better person every day. And for me, just as a man, just a male journey is just to look forward, have goals, have visions, and stride toward them. And I've got a lot of visions, I've got a lot of hobbies, but I also have a practical mindset and very pragmatic, and I realize I have to narrow them down, focus on them, and move forward. Women tend to have a little bit different goals. They may choose a man who has those. I think they tend to find that attractive. And if they can play the support role in that's an amazing job, because it relieves a lot of the peripheries that a man has to deal with, an individual has to deal with on a daily basis. And likewise, if a woman in your life has certain goals and certain things she wants to get to, a man should be supportive and also try to cover the grounds where she needs it, and that's how you support each other. And eventually you takes two to build a foundation that's much stronger than what one can do. So we'll see how that works, and that's advice I would give to anybody else, and it's something I try to do in my life. Another lens of knowledge we have is the physical side of men, the physical side of sports, physical conditioning, and there's appreciation for. I have a good appreciation for virtually anyone in sports, especially the top tier athletes. They are flat out amazing at what they do. I will grant there are some body types that are better towards certain types of events or sports than others. But that's okay. I mean, use the genetics that you have. People have transcended that and maybe not built for that particular sport and gotten to very high levels. Those are also amazing individuals taken into consideration. The one sport I got into very late in life, actually as a young adult, was ice hockey. And where has that been all my life? My goodness. It combines a lot of things that I just love in a sport, where it's fast-paced, moving. Everyone on the ice has to be quick, coordinated, smart, fast, physical, and always thinking on the fly. And every sport, I think, is better to play than watch. But I like the true team cohesiveness that you get with ice hockey. You can have a great player on the team. You can have the best player on the ice, but you have a weak team, it may not perform well. And I've seen that over and over again. You can have a whole team of average level players, but if they play well together, they're darn near unbeatable. They may not have any standouts, and those are the most dangerous teams to play against, and some of the best teams to play for, because everyone's on a similar level, everyone clicks, everyone moves well, there's a certain flow to the game. And that's the flow state is a neuroscience thing that you can actually enter when you're getting going into something like that, and physical activity can bring that to light. It's pretty amazing, fun to experience. Doesn't always happen, but something to look forward to. But I'll defend ice hockey against any other sport too, mainly because it's my favorite, but that's just me personally. But I would definitely hear arguments against it. I think those are fun, because there's no winning those arguments, but they're just fun to have. One sidebar for neuroscience is IQ and intelligence and education. What are we looking for? Most often when people say he's highly educated or that person's highly educated, what do they mean? They're trying to say they're very smart. And yes, a highly educated person is very smart, but they tend to be smart in one category, right? A PhD is very sharp in one category, not often very sharp, and the expectation of their intelligence is high in one category that they're very highly educated in. And yes, it takes a ton of work to get there, and there's no discrediting that at all. But the expectation is they're also smart in every other category, periphery or even further out. And that's pretty far from the truth. They do have some skills to seem well educated in others, but they're often not that smart, and what I found. So I've worked with PhD level engineers as a technician, as an engineering tech, and sometimes I had to kind of earn their respect by showing them something that they didn't know and tricking them. And then once I did, they tend to relax, drop their guard, realize, hey, maybe this person maybe knows some things I don't. Then they tend to have a little more respect for me. I find that amazing. Me as a person with what I feel is good general intelligence, which means I have all these different lenses of knowledge I have given me good general intelligence. It often gives me a perspective that they don't have. They're very good with the tools they've got, but they only look at it through the tools they've got. Where I have many, 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 many tools on a much lower level. They're up here. I'm all along here. So, but every now and then I can catch something on the outside that comes up and points to something. Hey, what about this? And then I didn't think about that. Good idea. And then they can, with their high education in that category, can take it away and move along. So that's ways that someone with good general intelligence can contribute. And I really think that someone with good general intelligence can contribute that way in nearly any setting. You obviously want to, if you're running a business, if you're solving problems or anything, you obviously want to get the people that are very, very specialized and know the subject very well. But I think you need at least one or two people of good general intelligence in there as well to maybe help with the periphery things that they don't see. And yeah, I've explored IQ, and IQ is an indicator of how the brain works, and that is kind of a neuroscience side of things. So what I've determined with my experiences with IQ, took a few tests, scored pretty well. I was pretty happy with myself after that. I was very hesitant to take them in the beginning because I thought, well, what if I'm just average, or what if I'm below average? Oh my goodness. Turns out I'm not. I'm a little higher than that. I'm not going to reveal a score, but what I did learn is all it really reveals is a processing speed of your brain, how quickly you can process a concept and come up with some sort of solution, or just grasp a concept in general and then kind of run with it. Lower IQ people tend to still be able to do the same task, but they can take a lot longer to do it. And there is a threshold on the low side. They're maybe just not able to do that. And that's something that even the United States military has acknowledged. And it's acknowledged it because once we get a person below a certain level, they're a detriment to the team. And because they usually can't function well in different things, different tasks they give them. So that's a very real and a very realistic way of looking at it, because as far as the military goes, if you screw up too much, people can die, and that's very serious. So they don't like that. Very understandable. So what do you do with them? That's just a whole nother topic that that we have to look at. Not something I know a lot of solutions on, but I would like to hear some people with some good ideas. Follow the money. Another lens of knowledge that I've gained in more recent years, and it's something I've always wondered from grade school on up. Like, when am I going to learn about money? There's no education there's no financial education whatsoever in school, which seems to me to be a critical thing, because it's a thing that so many Americans are lacking. We're supposed to get that from our parents. Well, what if our parents aren't good with money? What if they don't have time to teach us? So you basically get to be 18 years old. You should have a good idea of what a balanced budget is, checking whatever, all the different financial options, renting versus owning, just running a budget. You should know that by the time you're 18. I had a little bit of that, but it wasn't enough, in my opinion. Gotten much older, got more curious about that subject. Came across a guy, Robert Kyosaki, who wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and kind of a big eye-opener. And it does feel a bit conspiratorial that we are not taught money to be kept dumb, to be kept locked within a system of trading our time for labor, just to serve people of higher education or I don't know, upper class people. But what I've learned even more so by that is, when you follow the money, especially when it comes to scientific studies, you tend to find the motivation behind the study and then how data can be manipulated. And I have good experience with both of those things, because I worked in a data-driven world, and when I was working in research and development and test labs, if you work with corrupted data, it's inaccurate and it's off. If you only look at certain parts of data, you don't get the whole picture, and then you can kind of write the rest of the picture however you want to, especially if you look official and you can stand up in front of an audience and say this. They'll tend to believe you, because guess what? That person's highly educated. They must know. If there's a financial curve to push the data one way or the other, they'll manipulate data. We saw this with an automotive example. We saw this with Volkswagen and Dieselgate. They manipulated the vehicle's ability to control its emissions, because in a certain state it knew it was on a dyno being tested for emissions. They cheated. They did it for financial gains. But they're using science all the way. So they utilized science to game the system for their advantage. Unfortunately, they were caught, and the rest is history there. So follow the money has really been a big eye-opener for me about how the world works. Corporate greed, stock markets, how shareholders can influence a company in that manner. They just can. They want quarter-by-quarter profits. They set goals and bars that way. Neuroscience can show you exactly why people drive for profits or drive for goals, because you get a goal, dopamine hit, yay, we did our job. Set the next goal, got there, dopamine hit, yay, we did our job. That's not a vision. That's not how you run a company long term. People that with pure vision, good leadership, their vision's far out there. It takes a long time to get there. And then people that are quarter by quarter profit driven don't understand that game, and they eventually fail. Time's a big revealer on all that. You'll see companies run into the ground because of being driven by quarter by quarter profit. hate to say it, but one of the companies I used to be very proud of, General Motors, they've done that, and that's when they failed and they were bailed out. And I hate to say it, but they're going that route again. Time will tell on that one. Maybe they'll dodge a bullet, maybe they'll turn it around. From what I can tell, I don't think so. But I'm hoping for the best, because goodness gracious, that is a huge part of the economy in this area, and it would be absolutely devastating to lose any one of the big 3 autos in our area. So hopefully that won't happen. Follow the money. Music is another lens of knowledge I have, and that's one I followed for a very long time. In many ways, didn't know why, but I like certain types of music. I like complex music. I like music that's got a little bit of theatrics to it. I love heavy metal. Metallica is one of my favorite bands. Then I get more into the progressive rock, progressive metal bands that are really complex. But there's an emotional part of music that just really pushes you emotionally, and the best examples I can think of that is like Pink Floyd. If you put a Pink Floyd album in, doesn't really matter any song, and your mood will change. And there's just a weird connection to that I just really enjoy. I love guitar. I love stringed instruments. Owned one for a while, tried playing it. It's one of the few talents that I've tried to possess. One of the few things I try to push myself in, and probably not enough. But it was more difficult than I thought it was. But I absolutely admire anyone who can do that. And the ability to listen to something with your ear and pick up the guitar with your hands and play exactly what you heard. And I absolutely admire that kind of ability. Music is something that I'll get into hopefully with I have some friends that are musicians, and I hope to have them on. But yeah, it's just a very fascinating thing, what it does to your mind, what it does to your whole body, and the way you feel music. The way certain types of music just make women dance. That's pretty hot too. There's just something there. Maybe it's a little on the primal side, who knows? But different forms of music affect people differently, and it's interesting to see what people like and why they like it. So that'll be an interesting topic to get into. Entrepreneurship. Gotta love people with courage to start new things, why they do it and why they get into it. And one of my first guests was Myron the entrepreneur, and that's exactly what he is. I ran into him recently again, and he was just one of the random guys I met in a pub, and I ran into him actually in one of his ventures, and how he educates himself, and fascinating individual. And I'll have him back on sometime. But I love the idea of how people start businesses, and this right now in this country still can do that. It just, things get a little more difficult as they go, but experiential learning sometimes can be very, very good for entrepreneurs. They just need to get in, get their hands dirty, and solve problems, and that's what a lot of them do. And it's fascinating to me. Nutrition. You are what you eat. That is so true. Eat a lot of processed foods, I think you're going to develop problems over time. Or your genetics do play a role in that, whether you're tolerant to certain nutritional deficiencies or not. I've done enough research on each individual vitamin, mineral, that I can probably talk like a nutritionist at times. I don't always recall what's what and what works with what at times, but I've put it all in a spreadsheet and I can reference it at any time. But I look at nutrition like a graphic equalizer, and you've got, it's like 100 different bands, and if you're not eating properly, and some of these bands will drop, and you take supplements or whatever, pull them back up. But if you run too long with those certain bands down, you can develop issues that way. And it seems to me, from all the research I've done in this, it's about 80% of our problems in this country, physical, medical issues, can be resolved, at least prevented, by good nutrition up front. And taking good supplements, not just supplements, but good ones, and that takes more research because it's an unregulated business. I think you can prevent a lot of that. I myself, in my 40s, I don't take one single prescription drug, which I'm pretty proud of. Even had a person at CVS went in to get some actual junk food with my daughters. I know, not nutrition, but it's a treat once in a while. Went in and we're checking out, and they do their spiel where they're trying to get you to get their little card or whatever. I said, not right now, and she just kept trying, and she's like, well, do you get your drugs here? I'm like, well, I'm not on any. She goes, you don't? You're not? And like, she was absolutely blown away that I wasn't on any type of medications. I'm like, no, I'm not. It's like, she was super impressive. Wow, you were really lucky to be that healthy. It's not all luck. Yeah. But I love nutrition. It's one of the things that feed your body properly and it will respond. And that's something I try to stay in tune with. Playing something physical, any physical sport, you kind of, whether you're exercising or playing a physical sport, you can feel it when you have not eaten well, and you can feel it when you have eaten well, and it does make a difference. Even cognitively, your brain functions better when you've eaten well, and your metabolism works better. Let's talk Tesla. I've talked not just Tesla the company, which I've studied probably since the mid-2000s when I first heard of the Roadster, and my experiences with electric RC cars kicked in, and I thought, and then my experiences with Nikola Tesla and his AC-powered motors, induction machines. I'm like, if you're calling your car a Tesla, you better have an induction machine in there. And sure enough, they did. And the modern Teslas are actually getting away from that, going to permanent magnet motors, but it's a whole nother deal. But the man behind the rise of Tesla, which is Elon Musk, who something founded it. Now, he got in the beginning, but he's taking it over, and he's brought forth so many things to light as a result of that company. So what I refer to as the Tesla effect. It hits everything. Why does the media put down Tesla? Well, Tesla doesn't advertise in the media. The other big auto does. One of the tricks the automakers will do to try to diffuse a startup is run media campaigns against them. Funny thing was, Nikola Tesla had that same problem with Thomas Edison, and there was a bad campaign ran against his stuff, and but it exposes media lies, and it does so much. It exposes so many things within the auto industry and their unwillingness to change and their unwillingness to see a disruptive innovation come their way. It really does affect so many things. What Elon Musk has done and what his first principles thinking, which to me is akin to engineering in root cause analysis, and it's also akin to philosophy like Socratic method. Just asking questions as if you know nothing until you know that, until you understand it, and then you can work up from there. And the three things are very well related, just slightly different disciplines. Mythology and religion, fun subjects. I, like George Carlin, was raised Catholic until I reached the age of reason. So Catholic upbringing, experience with some of the down south Bible Belt kind of non-denominational stuff. I could watch that stuff and I could see exactly what they're doing, and I just despised it. I just thought it was just so underhanded, and the thought process came to my head: if there really is evil, it hides itself in some. It hides itself as something that appears to be good to people, and seeing people lead people like a shepherd leads sheep is kind of crazy, and these people would just do it without question. And me, I like to question things and question myself out of Catholicism and question myself out of religion in general. And also, as a result, I just got really interested in different mythologies. And that was even something I asked during, in Catholic school, they have religion class. And I asked one day about, when are we going to learn about other religions? And no, don't ask that. But anyway, I got really, as I got older, more into adulthood, and just wanted to explore other mythologies, not religions. I wasn't looking to follow anything. I was just trying to understand how ancient people thought, and their religions often guided them, and found some fascinating stories in both ancient Greek and ancient Norse and Finnish and Celtic mythologies. And some of them are just maybe like looking at my biological makeup of what countries my families have come from, and looking down that path and knowing that the mythologies of the area affects how the people think, and saw some of that in myself. And it's pretty interesting, pretty fascinating. And it's just one subject that one of the friends and I have connected on, and would love to talk about that kind of stuff. And it's pretty cool to compare and contrast that with modern thinking and what the ancient people thought about stuff, issues that we're dealing with today. And also helps you realize so much of life is cyclical, and it just keeps coming around and around, and can't really worry about it. But it's a subject that some people get really uncomfortable with, because it makes them think, and sometimes you start thinking too much. You start to get away from the flock. Comedy movie quotes. Well, that's how I started the channel. All the funny comedy movie stuff that's it springs into my head. I don't know why. I call it my useless superpower. Someone says something funny, all of a sudden I think of a comedy movie, and there we go. So, yeah. Any funny scenario, a comedy movie comes to my head, and I'll quote it. And there's a certain group of people out there that will quote them back to you, and it's almost like talking a different language. And some people just don't get it and what your references are. But I think it's funny. And there are times when, in a serious conversation, and I hear something, and it makes me think about something in a comedy movie, and gotta laugh. I just start laughing, and I'm the only person laughing because I'm the only one who understands. Like, well, surely it can't be serious. Naked Gun, or not Naked Gun, Airplane. Leslie Nielsen. I am serious, and don't call me Shirley. So little things like that. My brain is full of them, and they'll come up at all times. It kind of helps with your quippy wit too, which I kind of like. Who doesn't love a good conspiracy theory? Let's go down some rabbit holes. Honestly, I've met some people that are very intelligent and have studied some things and make you think maybe it's for real. And if it is for real, that's pretty scary. But what do you do about them? And how does that really affect your day-to-day life? So my question to them is, what do you do about it? And is there anything that you can really do or not? But we'll see. Another subject I've really kind of looked into is masculinity, and it's pretty common today to hear this term called toxic masculinity, and I don't think masculinity is toxic. I think there are false forms that are identified as masculine, and they're not. And I do think there is a problem of this day and age of what I refer to as adult age adolescence. And what that means is there are people of adult age that you would call men, but they are not men. They act like teenagers or even younger brats. and their attitudes, their emotional outbursts, all show that. Unfortunately, some of it is false male posturing as some sort of large alpha male, chest beater, bad man, I can beat up anybody here. Yeah, whatever. That's not masculine. A masculine man was actually someone who will take care of those people in their charge, or their friends, family, anyone around them. The dangerous brute that comes in there who's trying shoving people around and acting like they're alpha male, they don't last, and someone will put them down. But masculinity itself is not toxic, but the toxic forms are false forms. And I'd love to have a discussion if someone thinks differently. We can talk it out. Let's hear it out, But I like to make that distinction. And I think a lot of people will say all men this, all men that. And I don't believe in absolutes either. When you speak in absolute terms, you're almost always wrong, because it's never 100% of one thing or another. And even when it comes to men and women, or if you want to talk about races or whatever, but races and religions and stuff, I still believe in the individual. And if you talk to the individual, you'll often find differences from the individual to any stereotypes you might come up with. So I look at an individual, and it's just you can go back to a Martin Luther King quote, judge me not by the color of my skin, but the content of my character. And that rings true. That definitely rings true. And it's very beautifully put. And that's how we really should think about life. And, masculine men, feminine women, feminists. Feminist is borderline. And it might be the same thing in reflecting upon that. Someone who's feminine or someone who's a feminist, those are different people, I think. Someone who's a feminist, I think that movement, much like I think about auto unions, had its time, had its purpose, but in modern day has failed to maintain relevancy and now looks for things just to keep itself relevant, and has become in and of itself toxic, and it's hurting society. And in a very narcissistic way, it tends to point the fingers at the opposition as if you're the problem, even when they're the problem. And obviously it's not them, because they're pointing it out, right? But I wouldn't mind having a discussion with someone who thinks they're a hardcore feminist too, and if they're willing to talk without emotional outbursts or name calling. Same thing with people locked political ideologies. They tend to go for the name calling and try to disgrace who you are as a person before they can even make their point, or typically when they can't make their point, or if they somehow know they're wrong. But it's a common tactic I see. But anyway, masculinity, not toxic, and it's something that males need to more or less have a rite of passage to go through to become a man, and it needs to be acknowledged by other real men that person is definitely a man. And maybe we should have an actual man card. I don't know, just a thought. Critical thinking skills, something I've gotten better at over time. I've never been one to take somebody's word for it. I like to experience it myself. I like to understand, know, and just gain the knowledge myself. So when people speak from authority, and they don't know why, I have big questions. And when you are a critical thinker, that's the first thing you do is you start questioning why. And you start ask why like a 3-year-old until you get a good answer. But that's kind of a very rudimentary basis of critical thinking skills, and I would put that against any locked ideology any day. And to find out the core of their thinking, find the root of their thinking, and break it down and build it up and compare that to the real world. What are real world examples? Show me where this works, right? And I think a lot of people just farm out their critical thinking skills for an ideology, and an ideology will basically tell you what to think on all these different subjects, and quite often they're wrong. And what I like to do is individualize people and ask them individual questions, and sometimes they don't agree they don't agree with everything in their locked ideology, which shows that they do have some critical thinking skills. And a lot of times that's something personal to them, that, oh, I don't agree with this part because I have something personal there. So that's kind of where you get at when you start talking to people, and it takes a face-to-face, and it takes getting to know people to get them outside of their ideologies. And I don't think we're 100% at war with each other. I think a lot of it is a bunch of keyboard warriors out there, saying what they want to say without any consequence of what they're saying. And if you want to be a social justice warrior, ask yourself, would you say that to Mike Tyson's face? I'd be careful what you say to that man. So, yeah, let's talk it out. A real man might punch you out. There would be good reason behind that, I'm sure. It would have to be. It would have to be justified. Justice, temperance, wisdom, honor, we need those things.